Hello everybody. Welcome to Creating the Basic Adaptable Game Engine Library, Part 58, Plane Dodger Scrolling Background. Starting in this video, we're going to write the code for the Plane Dodger game, which we explained in the previous video. And our first task is going to be to set up the background. But unlike the games we've made up to this point, the background is going to be dynamic. In both Starfish Collector and Asteroids, we used a single image, but in Plane Dodger, to simulate the effect of movement, the background is going to appear to scroll forever. As we briefly mentioned in the last video, that could be a problem because images are, by definition, finite. So here is something which I call the infinite scrolling trick. It's a kind of standard technique. There are some images which you can find which are called seamless images. And a seamless image is one that lines up with itself when a copy of itself is placed next to itself. For example, in this set of dashed lines is a background image representing a sky and some clouds and some mountains. And next to it, I've placed a second copy of that same image. But if you look along the line where these two images meet, they actually come together rather nicely. Right? The left edge lines up with the right edge. So the idea is to have an image like this moving from the right to the left. But after it moves far enough, we're going to want to shift the image back, right? So we don't run out of images. Now there's two ways we can do this. We could have two separate images and they're both traveling from left to right, and then once the first image has gone all the way past the boundary of the window, which is outlined in a thick black line, then we could have it move and shift itself to the right. Or we can have a single image which contains two copies of this seamless texture, which is going to be twice as large as our window, or at least twice as wide as our window. And then once that image moves so that the right-hand side is aligned with the right-hand edge of the window, then we're going to shift it back to the right by the width of the window. And so this is the plan, and let's go ahead and go to our development environment and let's go ahead and start doing some coding. So here we are with IntelliJ. And in the images directory, and as usual, all of this will be uploaded to GitHub, we have a bunch of new image files. In particular, we have this image of the sky, which we're going to use. And notice that it is two copies of the same seamless texture. As a reference point, one of these mountaintops has kind of a flat edge. You can see it here and then repeated over here. This is going to be the scrolling background image that we'll use. So to begin, let's go ahead and create a new class, which I'll call Plane Dodger. So let's see, I'll right-click a new Java class named Plane Dodger. All right. As always, we want this to extend the game class. And because it extends the game class, this red underline means there are two methods we must implement. And so public void initialize and public void update. And let's go ahead and put it in an image of the sky first. Now we're going to move that using the physics behavior, but we also need to shift it from the left to the right in the update method. For that reason, I'm going to declare this sprite here. Right, so a public sprite named sky. Sky equals a new sprite. Now let's make a texture. Maybe call it sky text equals a new texture. From the images directory, sky.png. And then sky.set texture to sky text. All right. And I'm a big fan of testing code as frequently as possible. So I want to go ahead and run this code immediately. I'm going to go ahead and run Plane Dodger. Actually, this is going to look kind of weird because we haven't actually centered the image on the screen yet, so it's going to appear a little bit up and to the left. But at least we can verify if the image is loading or not. And I'm not seeing anything loading. Let's see. Oh, it's because I didn't add it to the main group. So let's go ahead and do that. And everything needs to be added to the main group in order for it to render. And at the same time, we might as well say set position. Let's center it on the screen. All right. At least there were no compilation errors. Let's see if we can actually see the sky in the window this time. So we can in fact see the background image. However, I actually need to resize the game window as well. So let's go ahead and do that next. So let's see, in the initialize method, let's also say set title. That's always a good idea. And let's set the window size. In this case, the base image we're using for the background is 600 pixels by 800 pixels. Right, so this game is taller than it is wide. Let's go ahead and do that and see how that looks. Hopefully we'll see the entire image this time. If that looks pretty good, there is a gray patch down here because I centered it assuming that I was doing an 800 by 600 image. I actually need to reverse these numbers. So 300 and 400, and this should be the last modification, and then that should look okay. Yep, that looks absolutely fine. The next step is going to be to get that background scrolling, and to do that we'll add a physics object. Right, so let's say sky dot add physics. Right, let's not add physics, sorry, that should be set physics. That should be a new physics object. There's going to be no acceleration, no deceleration. The background isn't going to go too fast, so maybe a max speed of 50 pixels. Although, for testing purposes, I'm going to up that speed a little bit. All right, so we'll set the physics. And then, this gives us the parameters. We still need to actually set the speed and position. Right, this doesn't set the speed, this just tells us how fast it could possibly go. So now we'll say sky.physics.set speed to 150. Again, we'll slow that down a little bit later. We also need to set the motion angle. We want this traveling to the left, so that'll be 180 degrees. And let's go ahead and run that. If everything's going according to plan, it should look like the sky is scrolling that direction. Yep, sure enough. If we had a character here, it would look like the character is moving to the right. But we still have to make that repeat. So let's go ahead and do that next. That'll happen in the update function. So let's say if the halfway point of the image gets past the left border of the screen. And so if sky.position.x is less than 0, then we want to shift it to the right by some amount. So we'll say sky.move by, let's see, the window is 600 by 800 pixels. Let's move by 600, 0. All right, let's go ahead and try that. Now hopefully what we'll see at this point is an endless scrolling background. We won't see any glitches or anything like that. Huh, that's interesting. So it is appearing to be stuck. And this is why we test it as much as possible. Sky, oh, not greater than 0, less than 0, right? Moving past the left-hand side. It's always important to get your inequalities going in the right direction. All right, let's go ahead and see if this runs. Sure enough, it looks like it's scrolling to the side. And as a reference point, let's watch that flat-topped mountain. And it should just kind of keep reappearing. And so that appears to be some smooth, endless scrolling action. Fantastic. All right, while we're at it, I also want to add an image of a ground as well. All right, so in this case, I have, again, a similar image to sky in that it's a seamless image. And this will function as the scrolling ground. And we'll have the ground and the sky move at different rates. Right? That's an effect called parallax. Parallax refers to things that are closer to you appearing to move faster than things which are farther away from you as you yourself are moving. So let's make a public sprite called ground. And the setup is going to be quite similar. Right, so ground will be a new sprite. Let's say texture ground tech equals a new texture, images/ground.png. We'll say ground.setTexture to be that ground text. Now the position, the base image for the ground is actually 600 by 80 pixels. So let's see, I want to set ground set position to, let's see, 300, so it's centered vertically, but I want it most of the way down on the screen. So let's see, if the whole screen is 800 pixels from top to bottom, I want it to occupy the bottom 80 pixels. So I want the center, I think, to be at 760. And we'll test that, see how that looks. And while we're at it, we might as well set all the same physics. And it's going to be very similar, so let's maybe do that and then replace sky with ground in each case. And now I actually want to change the speed of the sky. Since the mountains are further away from us than the ground, I'd like the sky speed to be slower than the ground speed. Let's also go ahead and set up the infinite scrolling for the ground. Again, it's going to be actually exactly the same as the sky. So I'll copy and paste that, but change the sky variable to the ground variable. All right, let's go ahead and see how that looks. If everything goes according to plan, we would expect to see the ground scrolling from right to left faster than the sky. Yep, and sure enough, the ground is scrolling a little bit faster. I might even slow down the background just a small bit more. Yeah, the ground is going faster, so it looks like the ground is kind of closer to us. All right, that looks pretty good. And maybe we'll also add the player plane, right? Actually, no, you know what? This is probably a good breaking point. We've got our scrolling backgrounds. I'm going to go ahead and slow down the sky just a little bit more. And in the next video, we'll start to add that plane, and we'll talk about how to simulate gravity and control it with a keyboard. This is a good stopping point for now. Thanks for watching.